You've heard all about Oregon and its beautiful coast, and now you can't stop dreaming about it. And although you can take some beautiful pictures out there, nothing can replace seeing it with your very own eyes. So you're ready to plan and book your trip to the Oregon coast, but aren't sure where to start? Well, I want to help you out with my 10 things you should know before you go to the Oregon coast list. Because all we want are the trips that we've planned to be as free of snags and hiccups as possible. So let's get started. Number 10, the beaches are not swimsuit beaches. I know this may be a deal breaker for some, but hear me out on this one. People have been surprised by this before, sometimes to the point that it ruins their vacation. The beaches on the Oregon coast are not the type that you'll find massive crowds of people sunbathing in bikinis, with the sounds of beats echoing off of someone's speakers. Sorry. But what they lack in bathing beauties, they make up for in vast, open, serene, and sometimes even rugged beauty. So don your windbreakers and galoshes and prepare yourself for some jaw-dropping views, beach combing, tide pooling, castle building, kite flying, and of course gorgeous sunsets that you can only see on the West Coast. Some of our favorite but not the only beaches we visit are South Jetty Beach in Florence, the beach at the trailhead of Hasita Head Lighthouse, near Florence, the Black Pebble Beach by Yaquina Head Lighthouse, in Newport, which is also a really great place to do some tide pooling, and the beaches of Pacific City. Number 9, plan for all kinds of weather. Of course, the Pacific Northwest is known for its rain, that's why it's so green, and that fact alone keeps many people away from this area. But truthfully, you can have a wide range of temperature and weather fluctuations on any given day. We've had stormy mornings followed by warm and sunny sunsets all in one day. You may even see a snowstorm in the winter, and people can sometimes get surprised with how windy it can be during the summertime because of the hot air pulling the air from the ocean. As long as you plan for it, bring some warm layering clothes with some waterproof gear, shoes that do good in the rain and on the rocks, you should be good to go. The thing to know is that rain brings life to nature. It saturates the colors, brightens the smells of the trees and the soil. It makes the forest bathing so much more enjoyable when everything has been kissed by the rain. So don't be too bummed out if you see a bunch of rain clouds on the forecast for your Oregon coast trip. This brings me to number 8, wear good adventure shoes. Because of the first two things we just talked about on the list, you'll want to make sure you're wearing shoes that you can walk around a bunch in, and in all types of weather and on different terrains. If you're in the market for such a shoe, I suggest checking out trail running shoes. They tend to be very versatile shoes that can handle all kinds of situations. And for the beach, I would suggest more of a puddle jumper boot or galoshes over, say, like a flip-flop. Because depending on the day, the water and the sand can be quite chilly, and if you end up having to walk on some rocks or something like that, the last thing you want is to be stuck wearing flip-flops. On to my favorite subject, the food. Number 7, try local food. It's honestly one of the main things I focus on when I'm planning a trip, because I feel like if you're not trying out local eateries and eating some of the regional foods, then why even travel? But that's just me. If I needed to boil it down to some of the foods that Oregon is best known for, and you see the most of, it would be baked goods, standing on the sidelines, watching life go by, seafood, but now I hear something that sounds like a love song, sweets shops, breakfast food, seems I'm falling, coffee shops, cobblers, especially Marionberry ones, cheese, of course, chowder, and of course, chowder. But Oregon also has some awesome conditions for farming as well, so you'll see a lot of produce stands and farms that give tours and have festivals. Now, most eateries, especially on the coast, will be smaller places, so if you have a large group, check ahead of time and make sure they can accommodate your group first, and always check the hours ahead of time. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. Long story short, you'll need some Tums and fiber capsules, but man, will you enjoy some delicious, warm, and comforting meals. And oftentimes, one of the best things about eating out in Oregon and its coast is the views you get while dining. It seems to be true that I found my heart's home. Who thought our roads led to Rome? And if I must list off some of my favorite places that we try to eat at whenever we visit Oregon, it would be the Grateful Bread, a bakery and cafe that lives up to its name with its hippie vibes. Found in Pacific City, you can get a good hearty breakfast and then pick up some baked goods on your way out for later. But check their hours first because they close up shop sporadically to feed local families in need. La Maison, a small cottage tucked away in Newport with European-inspired dishes served on glass-blown plates, along with, you guessed it, delicious baked goods. The Chowder Bowl at Nye Beach in Newport, Oregon, where you can get the Chowder Cannonball, a sourdough bread bowl full of clam chowder and topped with a wad of butter. And if that's not your thing, they have many other seafood options, even non-seafood items as well if you prefer a burger and fries or a sandwich instead. Pacific Sourdough, the most hidden and difficult place to track down on this list, tucked away on a back street by the river in Waltport and open mostly on the weekends, so check their hours. But if you do happen to get their beautiful artisan breads and baked goods will be your reward. Lastly, back in Newport, on their bayfront, you have my absolute favorite restaurant, Clearwater. Besides having the best view in the bay, it also somehow toes the lines of fine dining, yet casual, hip but family-friendly, with awesome food selections across the board and beautiful desserts. But honestly, sometimes we just like to pick up some local ingredients and enjoy a home-cooked banquet in the comfort of our own rental. Speaking of restaurant hours, number 6, check the operating hours of any eateries, shops, or sites before you take a big old trek out to visit it. That's because the coast has its own idea of what operating hours actually are and is affected greatly by seasonality. Places may open a little bit later than you may think. They may be closed on random days, and in smaller towns, closing time is usually between 6 and 8 p.m. So I suggest hopping online and double checking times so you're not surprised with any seasonal closures or an early closing time. Number 5, adventure beyond the beaches. Now I know the beaches are a big draw and for good reason, but there's so much more to see around the Oregon coast than just the beaches. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of trails ranging from easy all the way to a very hard hike. Hiking trails aside, you also have all kinds of forests, rivers, and lakes. Local gardens and farms that offer tours. Educational aquariums, like this one that you can find in Newport. And lighthouses galore. I think you guys are getting my point here. So don't be afraid to venture beyond that one beach that your friend told you about. Do a little research, like you are right now. Good job. And you're bound to find some things that fit your vacationing style. Which reminds me, if you're liking this video so far, would you please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more travel content. Number 4, you need a car. You're going to need a car for an Oregon trip, especially if you're going to the coast. Because even if you fly into Oregon, it's still an 1.5 to 2 hour drive from the Portland airport to get to the coast. And it's just a really big state with a lot of nature and open spaces, and that's why we love it so much, but it's also why you need a car to get around it. Oh, and I have to give this sidebar. The state of Oregon doesn't let you pump your own gas, so don't try because you'll have a frantic gas attendant flag you down and stop you. Just simply pull up to the pump and wait for someone to come up and help you. All of that aside, driving around is part of the journey when you go to Oregon. The hardest part is keeping your eyes on the road. Number 3, try to get a beach house rental. And I know what you're thinking, that sounds really pricey, or perhaps you've heard a horror story about someone staying in a really bad Airbnb. So here's the thing. The Oregon coast has way more rentals than it does hotels, and the hotels are not the fanciest, and the cost is pretty close to the same as a rental when you really look at the full picture. Especially if you can be a little bit flexible with your dates, that can also help with saving on the cost. If you haven't looked into it yet, I suggest you do using any of the usual Airbnb, Vrbo, Vacasa, or HomeAway websites or apps. I think you'd be surprised with the overall price comparison, especially when you consider you're getting an entire house to yourself, usually with a fully stocked kitchen. Some have hot tubs or game rooms and beach stuff to borrow. And if you're traveling with a large group, maybe multiple families, you can split the costs, and sometimes it ends up being even cheaper than a hotel room when you do that. And I've stayed in reasonably priced places that literally have the ocean in its backyard. It's just really nice to have an awesome place to temporarily call home, to cook meals in, roast marshmallows, or just cozy up in and enjoy the view. A little side note, I've stayed in at least 6 different beach houses, I think, in Oregon, and I have yet to have a bad experience. Just read the reviews and don't be afraid to ask the host questions before you actually book the house, so you make sure you're making the right decision for you and your family. Number 2, don't just do the top tourist things. Oh, please don't hate me for this, but here's the thing. Everyone is going to tell you to go to Multnomah Falls, the Tillamook Cheese Factory, and the Sea Lion Caves and Cannon Beach. And while some may live up to the hype, for the most part, you will also be sharing your experience with every other person who also heard about that must-do thing. Yes, Multnomah Falls is very pretty, but you will also spend a lot of extra time finding parking, and it takes some trick photography to crop out those people out of your pictures. But here's the thing, Oregon also has over 200 other falls statewide that you can visit that are just as pretty, but just not so busy. So it's worth checking those ones out too. Of course, Tillamook Cheese Factory is a fun little site to go visit that won't even take up half of your day, but don't forget to also visit the Blue Heron next door for local brie cheeses, wines, jams, and mustards. The Sea Lion Caves are usually either a major hit or a major miss, depending on who you're asking, due to the smell and the seasonality of the sea lions even being there in the cave. So if you don't make it out that way, rest assured you can also see a bunch of sea lions at the Newport Bay, sunning by the docks, and up and down the rest of the coast. And Cannon Beach is cool, but it's not the only beach that has a haystack rock along the coast. In fact, the entire Oregon coast is littered with sea stacks, including this one in one of my favorite places, Pacific City. I'm not trying to bash on these places, all I'm saying is don't be afraid to adventure past the popular spots so you can have a special experience without sharing it with everyone else. Lastly, number 1, you can't do it all, but you can enjoy all that you're doing. The reality is there's so much to do in Oregon and along its coast that you can't possibly do it all. Instead, I suggest allowing yourself the time to take a moment to take it all in, take in the natural wonders and even some of the man-made ones. Get just a little bit lost so you can have a story to tell. Introduce your babies to the ocean. Let your little ones explore nature. Let them get dirty collecting rocks and seashells so they can take them home after. Go on an adventure with those you love because we all know life is too short and we never regret the experiences we've had with those we care most about. If you're still with me, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel so we can adventure and explore more together.